South Gauteng High Court is expected to hear the matter between the survivors of the Marikana Massacre, President Cyril Ramaphosa and Sibanye Stillwater next Friday. The case concerns the 2012 incident that left 44 mine workers dead in Marikana in the northwest province. Over 300 mine workers arrested during the unrest filed papers against President Ramaphosa, lawmen and government, asking that they be held liable for the actions of the South African Police Service. Government has reportedly already paid 170 million rand in compensation to the survivors of the massacre. However, the widows of the slain mine workers say that they're still mourning the deaths of their loved ones. For a little bit more on this, we're now joined by Rehad Desai, a filmmaker of Miners Shot Down, a South African documentary focusing on the 2012 Marikana Massacre. Rehad, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Peter.
Also, let's start with the President's reasons why he hasn't met the families to date. What do you make of the reasons that he put forward?
Well, I do know that both unions have been involved, particularly AMCU. The delays are beyond me. This has been going on for at least 3, 4, possibly 5 years now. This question of going up there and making the apology. I think really we need to get those who've got some stake in this matter, institutions, possibly move them to the side, and the widows themselves need to take charge of this. I think they know each other. They spent many years inside the commission, and many of them are still in touch with one another to ensure and that they have a bond. And I think between them and the President's office, it needs to be sorted out. I think they are coming around to a position where that they want to represent themselves on a number of matters and have the organisation to do that. So let's hope something can break, because it's very important, but it's until justice has been done, those who pulled the trigger, those who are responsible behind this massacre, I think they will continue to grieve until we've finalised the compensation. Many of the injured have not been compensated. The claim from the families for grief and psychological trauma has not been met by the state. Not one single police officer is behind bars. It's 9 years on. No wonder they're still grieving.
Yeah, it is a difficult one, and I guess maybe for people trying to understand, the 174 million that's been paid, what is that for? And is that not a settlement? Is that not a figure that's been agreed to through negotiations? How did they get to that amount? And what is still outstanding then? I think you've started to answer that.
In 2018, a paltry amount was offered. I think in 2016. And in 2018, the offer was increased when the widows of the families of the security men and police officers were given a substantially higher sum than what was being offered to the injured, the families of the mine workers themselves, the striking mine workers. And so there was always two sets of claims from the family. One was for loss of income, and that has been agreed upon by everybody. Not everybody is happy. Some people were contract workers and were at the end of their working life, for instance, only received 150,000 rand in compensation. Those contract workers were particularly, the families of those contract workers were particularly unhappy with that. Other people received up to 700, and some a little bit more, depending on the age of the mine worker that was killed, or the policeman or security official, and so on. So, but the outstanding claim is for psychological trauma and grief. and the state are not willing to entertain that claim from the families. So that's going to go to the civil courts. Most of the injured have received and agreed to their claims. A number of them are still outstanding. People who are seriously injured and will remain crippled for life. And they're really in a very terrible situation. Hardly any support at all. And they're ailing. This is COVID times. It's really not a good situation. And then we have 20 mine workers who are still facing serious public violence charges, and none of those claims. Some of them been injured and have other claims along with the arrested. Those who have been arrested, those claims, wrongfully arrested, those claims are still outstanding too. So it's a long way to go, and we really need the president to crack the whip. If he is sincere about resolving these matters, then he needs to intervene directly, like he has with the vaccine acquisition and other important issues to bring our country straight, so to speak.
In making your film, you probably would have done a lot of research and listened to both sides of the arguments. What has the state been putting forward predominantly? I get a feeling they're probably scared to set a precedent, because if they make certain payments here, it may be that a lot of other cases suddenly will come forward where one or two people are killed, not in a massacre type scenario, and the same kind of compensation is probably going to have to be paid out. I've got a feeling they're probably scared of that on top of everything else. What sort of arguments were they putting forward?
Well, I don't know. The line seems to be disturbed by something. I'm sure that is one of the arguments. I'm not. These negotiations are supposed to be held in confidence. I know very little about what's been said. To say, I think that is, but I've heard in the corridors. That is one of their fears. The other issue is that, and also these claims, the lawyers for these widows want to keep these claims in confidence because there's lots of desperate family members around and so on who may want to get their hands on this money in one way or the other. But what we know, and I think what we can say, is this is a very small amount of money when it comes down to it. 200, 300 million rand for the loss of so many lives. Many of these people in their prime years. The widows have historically followed the traditions where their men have been killed in the course of their duty or their work. The mine will give the next family member work. So a lot of the widows, the only person that could go to work were themselves. So they're now in Marikana, some 25 of them, working at what used to be Longman's, Sibanye. These jobs, they're having to leave their families behind with caregivers and so on. And this is a really sorrowful situation that the only way that they could survive up until now was by leaving their children behind and coming up to Marikana, which is not a great environment for anyone who's trying to heal. So I think the other concern is that the state don't want to give too much. They don't, giving compensation in the first place is in a way recognising their guilt in the matter. Yep. This thing was handled horribly wrong. that they allowed themselves to be led by the nose by a multinational corporation to put down a strike with very violent means, very brutally, in front of the world's cameras.
So, Rehad, we're running out of time. I just want to get a sense from you. I mean, a lot of focus has been put on money and compensation, but I suppose there's something that actually you can't put a value on, and that's an apology, isn't it? And I guess that a lot of these families want to hear a sincere apology.
Absolutely. It's very heartfelt, their desire to meet face to face. It was them, the families, who asked for this apology, and for it to happen in person, and for the unions and other community groups to be blocking it, and for the president to allow this is really not on. But also, it's just not an apology. Justice needs to be done. Those who pulled those triggers and gave those orders need to be behind bars.
Okay, Rehad Desai, we're going to have to leave it there, but thanks very much indeed for joining us on the program tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this story's been years in the making, and still no conclusions. Lots of payments have been made, but for the victims, still not enough.